Hello, this is Cynthia Sue Larson of realityshifters.com, and I've got a poem to read to you today. It's by Rumi. This is love, to fly toward a secret sky, to cause 100 veils to fall each moment. First to let go of life, finally to take a step without feet. And this poem to me evokes such a feeling of being in love, not just the romantic kind, but the type of having one's whole heart open up. Of course, it would apply to romantic love as well. But for me, I have a very deep connection to this poem because it reminds me of a time when I went to the Grace Cathedral in San Francisco in hopes that I could gain some information, some guidance regarding what to do at a time in my life when everything was in total upheaval. I needed to make some changes, but I didn't know which direction to go next. Didn't even know what to do next. So I had heard that the labyrinth walk could be a sacred way of connecting to one's sense of true inner knowingness, and I wanted to get that information. So walking through the labyrinth and thinking about this question, when I got to the center of the labyrinth, I was surprised that the chimes, the carillon chimes in the Grace Cathedral began to go off, and the bells were chiming bong, 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 as I was waiting for an answer. And the answer I got was in the form of a question, which basically said, what are you living for? And the combination of that question and the bells intoning all around me in that very melodic fashion had me realize that there's only one thing that's worth living for in my life, and that's love. And by that I once again mean the kind of love that is all-encompassing, that has to do with loving what I am, loving what I do, loving who I am, loving who I'm with. And naturally, this made a big difference in my life as I chose to dedicate my work to life coaching, to the newsletter, the website, everything I'm doing today. And the other thing I'd like to talk about this month, which is exciting for me, is that some psychologists at the University of California in Los Angeles, UCLA, have been doing some research that has to do with the fact that women who were studied feeling various sensations of pain had a reduction in that pain when they were looking at a picture of a loved one. The implication of that study, to me, has to do once again with that poem by Rumi, that sense of going outside oneself at a time that we do connect with love, that we can transcend all the dualities, all the conflict on this earth by getting into that state of lovingness. And it is something that's open to all of us, regardless of whether we're in a romantic relationship or not. So that's something good to know, something easy to do to bring ourselves out of any kind of pain or conflict that we might be facing. And I've also got a couple of books that I read this month that I'd love to talk about. One is The Happiness Plan, and it's a book which, as you might guess, has to do with happiness. It's I consider it a book that's really empowering for someone who's already pretty much certain that they do want to work on this subject, because there are lots of, that's a cartoon, but there are lots of worksheets. So it's something that you could do if you want to really get serious about your commitment to living a happier life and getting rid of things that are in the way of that. The other book that I read is called Reading Minds and Markets, and I guess I was going into it thinking, wow, is this going to give us a really intuitive way to just get the behind-the-scenes knowingness of what's happening with the financial markets? And actually, in a way, the answer is yes and no. It does give us information. It's the kind of book that someone who's already pretty adept with the stock markets would be best off reading, because it does get a little bit into the details relating to what you might call technical trading, but it does so in a way that any investor can benefit. And so I find it useful in terms of knowing what's going on when we talk about a rising tide lifts all ships, for example. What does that mean, and how do we choose the next rising tide? So if you kind of know what I'm talking about there, and this sounds interesting, I think you'd really like it. So thanks very much for joining me this month. I hope you have a fabulous month. I hope you keep finding out how good every situation can get just by asking that question and looking at life from that perspective and point of view. Thanks a lot. Till next time, I'm Cynthia Sue Larson.